When you watch a film or you read a book and there's a character that you identify with, you most of the time identify with them because they're targeting something in you that feels that you've been there.
This is a great piece of writing advice from Taylor. So when a normal person or a regular person reads a book that they enjoy or watches a show on Netflix that they find really good and start binge watching, or perhaps they go and see a great film, they say to themselves that was really good, and then they forget about it and move on with their day or their week. But as a creative person or as somebody who likes to write, it's worthwhile spending a little bit of extra time thinking about and asking yourself, what appealed to me about that book or that TV show or that film? Was it an interesting character? Was it an interesting plotline? Or was it something clever that the writer or screenwriter or novelist did? And then when you start to reflect on what inspires you and the types of characters that appeal to you or the types of plot lines that you like to follow, these could be clues for ideas for your next creative project. And sometimes it's helpful to write down what you liked. It could be a great line or it could be a great ending in a notepad or a notebook, and then you can read back on your old notes. And it's not that you're going to copy or rip off these ideas from other creatives. It's simply that you're reflecting on ideas from different sources and then figuring out how you can remix them or reuse them for your own work. I also love this advice from Taylor where she says about the importance of writing words and phrases and ideas down regularly. Taylor writes down words and phrases that she could potentially use for some future song or for some future hit. But she doesn't write these words and phrases down with the express intention of using them all. She simply doesn't want to forget these ideas as they pop into her head. And this is something that I've come across with a lot of creatives, a lot of writers, and a lot of people working in different creative disciplines. So they might think of an idea while they're out for a walk, for example, or in the shower, or at work, or doing something around the house. And rather than saying to themselves, I'll remember this when it's time to write or work on my current creative project, they'll pull out a pen and paper and they'll write down a couple of words so they don't forget the idea in question. Or perhaps they'll open up the note-taking app on their phone and jot down a few bullet points. Or they could even record or dictate a voice memo to themselves that they'll look at or listen to later on. The key here is to get into the habit of capturing ideas regularly rather than assuming that you're going to remember everything. And if you have all of your ideas and thoughts and inspirations in one place, try and review them once a week or once every other week, and you may be able to find one or two things amongst all the ideas that you've captured that you could use for your current creative projects.
I literally will listen to music that my idol made, watch all of their interviews, and then go back and be like, okay, I'm gonna try to write a song as if they were writing this song. And it just completely broadens your horizons and helps make your music just that much better.
Here Olivia is describing how she'll spend time listening to songs from her creative idols, trying to figure out what worked. And then when it's time for her to write a song, she will sometimes write something similar, but then she'll add her own unique slant or worldview. And again, this idea of borrowing from other people that inspires you is something that I've come across in other creative fields. There's a great quote from Francis Ford Coppola. He's the director of The Godfather. And he says, "We want you at first to steal from us because you can't steal. You will take what we give you and you will put it in your own voice, and that's how you will find your voice." So in other words, if you take an idea from one person or you copy exactly what one person does, that's stealing or plagiarism. But if you're taking ideas from multiple different people, combining them, and then adding your own unique point of view or your own unique worldview, well, that's creativity. It's also worthwhile remembering that at the start of the creative process, you may spend time writing an article or writing a story, and it sounds very much like something that somebody you admire would have written, although probably not as good. This used to happen to me when I started writing non-fiction online. However, that's simply a marker that you're getting started on your creative journey, because if you spend time figuring out the voices of other creatives that you admire, you'll start to pull out elements that work for you or your own unique writing style, and then you'll discard elements that no longer work. And of course, if you do this multiple times, and if you also add your own unique worldview, like I talked about a few moments ago, then chances are your piece will be more unique or more distinct.
To develop as a writer, you must be reading books constantly.
Stephen King is a big advocate for reading being part of the writer's job. In other words, if you want to succeed at writing within a particular niche or genre, then you need to read all the great books from that niche or genre. You need to read widely and deeply inside and outside of your comfort zone. And he's not the only creative or author who says this. Here's what Colleen Hoover says.
I remember when I was trying to write my first book, I bought so many books just so I could sit there and study them.
How can you read more frequently? Well, there are a number of strategies that you can try. Firstly, you could have more than one book on the go at any one time. I personally like to read 3 different books. So in the morning, I might read some challenging non-fiction that I would find difficult to read later on when I'm tired. When I'm on the go during the day, I might listen to an audiobook on Audible. It's a great way of reading a book while I'm in the gym or out for a walk or a run. And then at night time, I might read some easy fiction that helps me fall asleep. Other great ways to read more frequently include putting a book down after the first 50 pages if you don't find it engaging or interesting. And that even applies to great books, because there are far more books out there than you'll ever have time to get through. Another great way of reading more frequently is to keep a list. I like to keep a list of 100 or 200 books that I want to read over the next few years. And I find it's helpful to tick these books off one by one as I get through them. Some I'll get through in a few days, some a few weeks, and some a few months. But it really does help with putting bad books down if I know there's always another book for me to read or enjoy. And of course, when you've finished reading the book, ask yourself, what did you find enjoyable or unenjoyable? What did the writer do that you thought was particularly clever? Were there any interesting ideas that you can use for your current creative projects? You could, of course, annotate sections in the book. And if you're doing this on Kindle, you can export your annotations to your computer and then review them when you're planning your next creative project.
And I just think pretty much anything you do, it's going to be better if you outline it first. Most anything.
James Patterson is a big believer in the power of outlines. Now, whatever you think about Patterson, and I know he has his critics, you can't argue that he's one of the most successful genre fiction authors of all time. Does his advice apply to you? Well, there are 2 types of writers. Pantsers sit down and write from the seat of their pants without any idea of where they're going. Plotters, on the other hand, like Patterson, figure out meticulously the structure of their books and stories. I spend a lot of time writing non-fiction, and I find it's really helpful for me to outline and figure out the structure of articles and book chapters before I write them. However, I will also spend some time free writing without any idea of what I'm going to write next. Usually this is a journal entry or some other type of creative project that I'm not going to publish online. It's up to you to figure out, does plotting help your writing process, and is it conducive to your current creative projects? Or do you find the quality of your work improves if you write from the seat of your pants? I recommend experimenting with both approaches. It doesn't take too long to create an outline for a story or a book chapter. You can use a good outlining app, and elsewhere in the channel I profile some of the best outliners out there that you can try. And it takes about maybe 10-15 minutes to create an outline for a 2,000 word article. Now obviously you need to spend longer creating an outline for a book, but there are templates that you can use, like the 3-act structure. On the other hand, if you want to write from the seat of your pants, chances are you just need some free space, a vague semblance of an idea, and some time to work on it without interruption. So try both approaches and figure out what works best for you.
There's a thing that worries me sometimes whenever you talk about creativity, because it can have this kind of feel that it's just nice, or it's warm, or it's something pleasant. It's not. It's vital. It's the way we heal each other.
Ethan Hawke is a pretty prolific guy. He's been in a number of hit films over the years. My favourite is the Before Sunset and Sunrise trilogy, and he's also knocked out a few best-selling books. And he loves riffing about the creative process, as you can see in this writing tip from him. Ethan Hawke is also a great promoter of his own work. And here's the key takeaway from this tip. You should do one thing every day that's creative or that advances your craft or your current creative project in some way. So this could be writing 300 or 400 words, or it could be editing the first draft of your manuscript, or outlining your next story. In other words, do something that inspires you. Then you should also do one thing every day that advances your writing career in some way. So this could be setting up an email list so you can build a relationship directly with readers. It could be recording videos about whatever it is that you're working on, or it could be collaborating with another writer. Think about it this way. Ethan writes screenplays for many of his hit films. He stars in them, and then he spends months promoting them while going on a tour. And this is an approach that you can use. Find time to do something creative every day, but also find time to work on your creative business. And this way you'll feel inspired, and you also stand a good chance of getting paid.
As a writer, I'm more easily, I'm distractible. If I'm going to be writing, I need to do it somewhere where I don't have a 3-year-old son singing to me, asking me to read to him, demanding my attention.
I tried to create a dedicated space where I can write, just like Neil describes in that writing tip. So this is my home office. I'm lucky enough to have a space like this in my house. In my home office, I have 2 large 27-inch monitors, and I also have 2 keyboards and a Mac computer. I also have a whiteboard on my wall, and sometimes I use this to outline ideas for stories or for articles, or even for book chapters. Now, I realize not every